The intention of whatever is being done is to destroy God's holy people.
Oh.
That's the end game.
So don't you think there's a public interest argument that yes, indeed, when we digitize our currencies, we'll be able to track monies that we keep losing to corruption every single year?
See, in implementation of the digital currency, you have to factor in the question of power consistency, the grid stability of a nation. And in the Ugandan context, when you read our response and when you read our performance, we're still doing badly.
A lot of these policy shifts seem to be very positive, plausible on paper. But how do we go beyond the objectives to really see the motivation?
If you're still struggling with the internet penetration in Uganda, then there is no way you can push the nationals. The spirit of the law is more important than the letter of the law. If you simply get persuaded that the letter of the law of the policy looks good and flowery, and you ignore the spirit.
Every innovation we've had has had some sort of pitfall. So what if there's actually a lot of good in it? What if it's us trying to advance, but there are pitfalls that we need to close?
If you coerce people into a digital currency, most likely they're going to look for an option of black market. Because they want to defy the extensive monitoring system that you're creating.
Are we not stifling innovation that would actually better us as a global village?
The intention of whatever is being done is to destroy God's holy people.
What is the mind of God pertaining the digitization agenda? Welcome to Beyond the Story, a segment here on the Circle of Life where we explore the deeper ramifications of the stories, some of the stories that are leading in the media. My name is Doreen Kanyesigye. Now, on 4th June 2026, the Bank of Uganda released a regulatory directive in which it capped both the individual and institutional cash withdrawals. The move, it argues, is meant to advance its e-payment strategy and align Uganda with a global trend. Now, for some, this represents modernization, right? For some, this really is the future of banking. But for most, questions abound. What happens to our freedom? What happens to our civil liberties? What happens to our right to transact as we choose? Now, this is the focus of our discussion today. Now, to help us unpack this very important conversation is Mr., or should I say, Advocate Simon Senyonga. He is a politician, a lawyer, and the director for International Center for Religious Advocacy and Development. Welcome, Mr. Simon. We are thrilled to have you here. Now, would like to delve into the key rationales that have been fronted by the Bank of Uganda in relation to this new regulatory directive that was issued on the 4th of June. There's three main key rationales. I'd love for you to help us delve deeper into, are they viable? The first directive I'd love for us to focus on is one in relation to the fact that majority, as they argue, of Ugandans have adopted the digital payment system. And the Bank of Uganda argues that that is reason enough for them to then channel our economy into focusing on the digital aspects and lessen the cash aspect. Is that reason enough for that directive?
First of all, thank you very much for hosting me.
Yes.
It's a pleasure to be here. It's my maiden appearance. I hope I can be a regular guest on this podcast.
It depends on how you do today.
I think I have never underperformed, so definitely you expect something exceptional. But let's put context to the discussion that you have shared. So that was on the 4th
of June.
Of June.
Yes.
2026. The Bank of Uganda issues a statement concerning over-the-counter
cash
withdrawals,
yes.
Specifically for individuals, but also for companies. I think for the individuals, it was capped at 50 million per day, which makes it to 50 million per week. Then for the companies or the corporate entities, it's capped at 500 million per week.
Per week?
Yes.
Okay.
So, first of all, I have keenly followed the conversation. Now, recently I was listening to Mr. Andrew Kawere, who is the Director National Payment Systems at the Bank of Uganda, at the BOU podcast, together with
Podcast Connect.
Nabachwa, yes. And they were having a conversation about the growth of the payment systems in Uganda. Now, Andrew Kawere's argument concerning the first point that you raise, why we should be able to shift in terms of the cash. He quotes interesting statistics by the Bank of Uganda. So he says over 300 trillion are transferred in mobile money right?
Yeah.
About 35 million active or registered mobile money accounts, about 17 million active accounts that are used. Now, he uses that as a basis to say that then there is statistical evidence that the Ugandans have embraced the use of digital platforms as a form of transaction.
Yeah.
Obviously, he also highlights that others are not touched within the course of his discussion. Specifically, he's talking about the likes of whether it's cryptocurrencies. And obviously, he keeps on making a strong case against the use of cash,
yeah.
and how the future, I think it's a parroted narrative. When you listen to all the proponents of the digital currency, they use one parroted narrative, which is the future is digital. So they use some of those statistics to justify whether we should have a cashless society, or what they call a cash-lite
economy.
Economy.
Yeah.
Now, the thing is that those statistics can be challenged on various fronts. Number one, is it that the growth in terms of the usage of mobile money or the usage of the transfers on these digital platforms is something organic, or it's something which has been specifically crafted by the whole move of digital currencies?
Yeah.
Now, I put to you a perspective that, number one, I think it's something which is organic, the growth of the usage of the digital platforms. And if it is organic, then you cannot legislate behavior or behavioral change. Because then you can't look at something organic and then you say that if we have maybe legislation, then it's important, it will change the attitude and the usage of cash in terms of the economic dynamics of our nation. So that does not fully justify that the Ugandans are fully embraced. Number two, when you assess our statistics of internet penetration in Uganda, now there are about two documents you need to pay in attention to.
Yeah.
The first one is the tenfold growth strategy of the NRM, which has informed the national budget of Uganda. Under that tenfold growth strategy, it gives specific highlight of how far we have gone, because you see the current budget, which has been read, has been summarized under about 4 or 5 frontiers.
Yeah.
The first one is on agriculture. The second one is on technology and innovation. You have one on mineral development. You have one on science and technology. Then you have an angle of creativity. Now, that growth strategy, at the center of it is the digitization agenda.
Yeah.
Now, the authors interrogate the question of how internet penetration has been performing. Now, Uganda has had a dismal internet penetration. To put it in layman's language, the extent of how much internet is used, whereas it has been growing, it has not been effectively representative of the entire economy. So you cannot simply say that the move to digitalize the currencies will come ahead of the programs that the government is having to make sure that the digital, what you call the digital agenda or the digitalization agenda, has gotten a strong foothold in our economy. So for me, those would be the two main aspects.
But don't you think they also cater for platforms such as mobile money, agency banking, which have really penetrated in the rural areas that are not a part of, that don't have the internet that you're talking about?
I think the thing is that you have to appreciate what the whole, say, over-the-top or over-the-counter limitation, cash limitation is bringing into a perspective. So from 2020, the Bank of Uganda began a strategic move, not on to get the economy into appreciating digital currency. I think there were reformations, number one, from the usage of how much cash you could withdraw using a check. That was the first move. Then the second one, that's around 2021. Then you had a progression around this time, 2025, 2026. Actually, critical around 2022, where now there is a deliberate move to popularize the whole digital currency usage in strategic ways. Now, what you're seeing right now is almost a culmination of what has been built over the past 6 years. So for you to appreciate the whole move towards the digitization of the economy through the digital currency, you have to look at the trends that we have been taking as a nation from around that time. And why is 2020 very critical? Because that is the time where there was a major global shift in terms of the COVID-19 pandemic. And you know that with that, Number one, there was the whole pandemic was handled with a securitization, what I call a securitization perspective. So I authored a couple of articles around that. The language that was used was a language which is militarily combative, which is dismissive, but also one which would cause you to have a sense of terror around disease. Now, because of that, even currency was framed. There's something called a frame of reference, or how you profile a society. So they will profile you to show you the danger of physical contact. So you can see the trend of our response to infectious diseases or pandemics or epidemics. It is one which is securitized. Now that language even seeps into how the what you would call the managers of the economy respond to questions of currency.
So are you saying that the move to digitize our economy as Uganda is part, which is what they also say anyway in their directive, is part of a global, of a bigger global trend that we need to be aware of, that you mentioned started in 2020 mostly?
Yeah, certainly. So again, I will just make reference to the statements that were made by the Director of National Payment Platforms, Mr. Andrew Kawere. So he says that Uganda picks a comparative analysis from two nations. I think that is Botswana and Namibia. But you see, when you look at the response of the Bank of Uganda before some of these statements, we have made reference to other nations which we think are emerging and more responsive to the digital currency, specifically Nigeria, Ghana, and I think there's been the United Kingdom and Kenya. Because
Nigeria is already implementing their cash withdrawal limits, aren't they?
But yes, they are. They have been, I think, in the year 2022. And I want to just to show you briefly, I just took a few notes here for us to and to debunk some of the narratives which are being propagated by the proponents of such a dangerous move. And I just want to show you what happened in Nigeria, because you see, wherever you choose to take a comparative analysis, don't only take a one-sided angle. Take the whole perspective of it. Don't only look at what was implemented, but also the response of the public, the response of the nationals. Now, Nigeria is quoted as a best case scenario, but you want to understand how the nationals responded when that was when that move was propagated. So these are some of the simple facts that we need to appreciate. The government begins by imposing what you would call cash limits in Nigeria. So the Central Bank of Nigeria did not begin in the same year as Uganda. So in Uganda, we are beginning with a high enforcement angle. In Nigeria, they began by offering incentives. All right? And their main questions that caused the people to run to the streets were mainly three. Number one, the question of financial privacy. The second one was the question of financial freedom. And then the third one was the stability of the banking system. So those were the three things that took the nationals to the streets to reject the digital currency. These are the timelines of implementation. In August 2022, the Central Bank of Nigeria began by removing access restrictions. This was part of the strategy, the global strategy to get popular buy-in of the digital currency is to give incentives to the nationals to reduce resistance. Now, because they know that the use of cash is a popular aspect, but then the use of digital currency is one which has been presented either from a manipulative, coercive angle, and therefore there is resistance. So anyway, Nigeria, August 2022, the Central Bank of Nigeria removes access restrictions. That means you are able to withdraw as much money as you wanted. In October 2022, the Central Bank of Nigeria offers discounts to people using the central bank digital currency to pay for cabs. So they targeted the transport system. So they say if you can use a cab and you can use the CBDC. In essence, the CBDC for the Ugandan context would mean that the Bank of Uganda turns the shilling into a digital shilling. So that means that you use a digital, what you call that digital currency to pay for services. So they incentivized in August, that was August, then in October, they give the CBDC for cabs. Then in December 2022, the Central Bank of Nigeria began restricting cash withdrawals to $25, all right, for individuals and $1,123 for companies. So the move was progressive from incentivizing to coercion. Now, and you're about to see how that script is being played even in the Ugandan context. Now, the CBDC, the Central Bank of Nigeria, then eventually redesigned the currency of Nigeria. So what it would do in the Ugandan context, for example, other than I think our maximum cash tender, legal tender is 50,000. So now they would say maybe a tender of 300,000 would be put in one cash cash note. So that's what the Central Bank of Nigeria did to incentivize the nationals. But you see, even in the midst of all that, there was overwhelming resistance.
They've gotten all the whole money. All the leadership of the bank, they go to their houses in the night and give them money. They did this policy for the poor, but the rich men, they've already collected the money. It's in their houses, not in the bank.
So eventually, when you look at the public reaction, the people hit the streets, they attack the banks, they attack the leaders of the banks. It was total hullabaloo in Nigeria. Now, remember, Uganda is now making reference to Nigeria as one of the best case scenarios. And I've just showed you how the Nigerians responded. So let's not only quote a flowery example of all Nigerians.
But perhaps our realities are different, because one of the other rationales that the central bank advances is that digitizing our economy will promote transparency and accountability. Now, the 2025 Transparency International Corruption Index ranks us, Uganda, as I think 148 out of 180 countries. So we're up there in corruption. So don't you think there's a public interest argument, right? That yes, indeed, when we digitize our currencies, we'll be able to track these monies that we keep losing to corruption every single year.
There are 3 points the Bank of Uganda advances. As you've said, flexibility, convenience, and creating digital traceability.
Traceability,
now,
yes.
The question of traceability in relation to the public interest argument. What really public interest argument means is that, and I'll put you in the context of the Bank of Uganda.
Okay.
So Article 161 of the Constitution of Uganda creates the Bank of Uganda. Article 162, specifically Clause 2, mentions that the Bank of Uganda has a responsibility to make or to manage the economy. If I'm to reference, actually, let me just quote specifics.
Yes.
Article 162. So this is the national constitution. Article 162, Clause 2. Okay. It says, actually, Clause 1. Let's begin with Clause 1. Clause 1, specifically 1B. The Bank of Uganda has a function of regulating the currency system in the interest of the economic progress of Uganda. I just made reference to you on the key document which is informing the national budget, the 10 growth strategy. And whether you have to interrogate whether this move actually addresses the core agenda of the NRM government insofar as getting Uganda to a 500 billion economy, all right, in the next few years, whether it is consistent with the NDP, which we're implementing right now. So Bank of Uganda has to interrogate that question of the growth, the economic growth and progress of Uganda. Number two, the Bank of Uganda has a legal obligation to make sure that it does all such things not inconsistent with this article, as may be prescribed by law. So in relation to the economic progress, you don't only read the Constitution as one part. You must factor in all other fundamental human rights. Now, also the same article says it must discourage and promote economic development. It must encourage and promote economic development and the efficient utilization of resources of Uganda through effective and efficient operation of a banking and credit system. Now, that's not even the most critical for me. This is where, in relation to the global agenda, the Constitution says, in performing its functions, the Bank of Uganda shall conform to this Constitution, but shall not be subject to the direction or control of any person or authority. Now, most people only want to interpret that as a controlling figure being the government. But the controlling figure can be foreign agents. In an era where we have just passed the Protection to Sovereignty Act, you have to interrogate, where does the Bank of Uganda derive its narrative and agenda? Now, I just showed you when a gentleman called Simon Chantry, this is the co-founder of BIT, which is a key implementing figure in the CBDC of Nigeria, was asked about the whole public response to the CBDC. He said that he wouldn't be shocked that Nigeria is going to be used as what we would call a lab rat, but eventually different central banks are to derive and to get inspiration from what Nigeria is doing. So no wonder, in the same breath in which Uganda is making comparative analysis, as I've told you, right now, they are shifting positions. They're talking about Botswana and Namibia. But before, they were talking about Nigeria. They were talking about Ghana. And I'll also give you a very few facts about Ghana. So Ghana, they implemented what they called, their currency is called the cedi. So they implemented the e-cedi, which is focused on financial inclusion. Now, with Ghana, their strategy was what you mentioned. They factored in more responding to the rural populations to get a broader buy-in. But still, there were concerns of offline capability. Because you see, in implementation of the digital currency, you have to factor in the question of power consistency, the grid stability of a nation. And in the Ugandan context, when you read our response and when you read our performance, we're still doing badly. So that was Ghana. So they talked about the United Kingdom. You know, Uganda is so obsessed with the United
UK.
Kingdom, maybe because they colonized us and we haven't yet moved on from the colonial tendencies. So in the United Kingdom, they explored the digital pound. And that was mainly, and it was the response of the public was with deliberate caution. That's the United Kingdom. Now, in understanding the global trends and the global perspectives towards responding to digital currencies, there are three main responses. These nations have responded. Number one, there have been those which have been outrightly pushing and implementing, all right, the digital currency. There have been those which have been proceeding with caution. And then there have been those which have outrightly resisted the digital currency. So now, whenever you're talking about comparative analysis, you must factor in the global response. You must factor in the nations that you're quoting and how the public has responded.
So now, beyond the comparative aspect, right? If we take this law and assess it within the Ugandan context alone, away from what happened in Nigeria, how do we as Ugandans correctly assess these policy shifts? Why do I ask? Because a lot of these policy shifts, such as this new directive that we've been given, seem to be very positive, plausible on paper. Corruption is eating people up, etc. Right? But how do we go beyond the objectives to really see the motivation? Because what you're saying is that there's a whole other motivation behind this digitization agenda. How does the ordinary person go beyond the print, the express print of the policy objective to know that, look here, there's another agenda behind this policy?
So I'll just give you two examples. So the first one, when you're implementing digital currency, most likely you're going to face two main aspects. The first one, you're going to push people into what you call a barter trading kind of aspect. Why? There is going to be, as expected from the comparatives I've given you, because you see Uganda is not a standalone nation. We are operating and existing in what you would call a global village. So comparatives are not an inexcuse. But again, you may want to have a standalone response as Uganda, but as I've told you, the three responses, don't ignore those three responses because they will inform even how, as the nationals, we should respond. Because even when I'm giving you advice on how the nationals should respond, I want to begin by the comparatives which we have quoted, because that's the safe space that the Bank of Uganda is talking about. They're saying when we look at these comparatives, it's a safe space for us to implement digital currencies. But I'm also telling you that there is what is unique to us as an economy. So number one, you're pushing the nationals into a better kind of trading system. Why? You're telling them the use of cash in the Ugandan context is not viable. Now, we also have to understand that this policy is going to take full implementation beginning January 2027. So you have about 6 months of strategic marketing of a dangerous narrative and agenda.
Start in July, they said.
Well, the real implementation is June. Is January 2027.
I mean the what's it called, the publication, the publicizing of the...
Yes, the whole stakeholder engagement, public building of public consciousness and awareness. So the first one is that. Now, Uganda has a predominant informal sector. With the predominant informal sector, that means that the nationals have to rely onto the usage of more of cash. Now, if the informal sector that is fully reliant on cash or maximally reliant on cash is not being factored in, it causes questions of discrimination. Now, Article 20 of the Constitution, Article 21 of the Constitution, let me just quote it for so that it can go on record. Article 21 of the Constitution says, it talks about aspects of non-discrimination, especially on grounds of the economic situation. So it says, equality and freedom from discrimination, that is the chapter 4 of the Constitution, Article 21. It says, all persons are equal before and under the law in all spheres of political, economic, social, and cultural life, and in every other respect, and shall enjoy equal protection of the law. So implementing a policy discriminating the informal sector on economic grounds. Number two, by implementing, and as I've told you, you have to go back and you appreciate the extent of our digital penetration, the internet penetration in Uganda. If you're still struggling with the internet penetration in Uganda, then there is no way you can push the nationals. Because you see, as you've said, on paper, it looks like, it's innocent, it looks flowery.
Yeah.
But when it comes to implementation, the language that is being propagated, because as a lawyer, I have a responsibility to tell you that don't just look at the letter of the law, look at the spirit of the law. The spirit of the law is more important than the letter of the law. If you simply get persuaded that the letter of the law of the policy looks good and flowery, and you ignore the spirit, as I've told you, go back and track our usage and how the Bank of Uganda has responded to the formation of digital currency. You go back and look at the timelines from 2020, even just about 2017, 2020, you look at how we have moved in the past 5 now coming to 6 years, it will show you the spirit of the law. Listen to the language of the perpetrators of this specific policy. It's a language which is, number one, condescending on the nationals. It presents us as a people who can only follow the foreign perspectives as opposed to creating a homogeneous solution.
Our
We are
narrative.
not addressing what are our national challenges. You have an informal sector, you have an agricultural sector, which is, by the way, informing the main aspects of the budget, all right? But the main agricultural sector, if you look at maybe in the cattle corridor, where people are relying more on the usage of cash. When you put a cap of 50 million, for the Ugandan the ordinary national will think 50 million is too much. But again, the flip side of that, you're creating, in terms of the narrative, that a narrative of non-expectation of growth of wealth. So you're saying that we shouldn't expect, you're putting us in a frame of reference, or you're profiling us as a society as people who should never expect to withdraw that much in a moment.
I was actually watching a podcast, and there's this guy who said, mwemwe enolo ya mwabali wagulu. Fe abali wansi really 50 M a day. When do they ever see it?
But you see, it's because they're detached from the actual statistics and the economic growth of Uganda. When you listen to Mr. Museveni, the president of Uganda, speaking about the 33% population which has to move into the money economy as a key agenda of the implementation of the NRM government strategy, then you understand that his passion and conviction goes beyond the few who are being limited in terms of the money or the cash economy. So actually, this policy is on cross purpose with what the NRM is implementing through its growth strategy, the tenfold growth strategy of getting people into the money economy and the cash economy. That's the language which is used.
And if I'm right, the Bank of Uganda does not need to seek approval from the executive or parliament, right?
Well, because again, number one, when we read the Bank of Uganda Act, the Bank of Uganda is given legal autonomy, to implement policy. But remember, policy does not override the constitutional protections. Article 1 of the Constitution says the Constitution is the supreme law of the land. It is the one which represents our aspirations as Ugandans. So you cannot make a policy which pushes away our aspirations. Number two, the ruling government gives you the blueprint of what should be implemented in that season. Now, if you're talking about a digitization agenda, anybody who was scared to read the 10-point growth strategy, which is being used as the key implementing document for the budget, will get to appreciate that whatever solutions we are having should be able to speak to our national realities. So the Bank of Uganda is propagating an agenda where it's saying that, number one, it gives an impression that we are safe. All right?
Majority of us.
When you're moving to the digital currency angle, you're speaking about questions of cyber security, cyber readiness. All right? In the recent the Uganda police crime report, you will come to realize that there is dismal reporting of cyber crime in Uganda. But I'll also give you two instances. Just last year, 2025, a court of Uganda issued an order against Stanbic Bank. The matter was brought by Abacus, the drug manufacturing company, the one in Mukono. It sued Stanbic Bank over the loss of 2 billion Ugandan shillings because of the glitches in its online banking system. So they lost 2 billion shillings. That's how it happened. So between 2015 to about 2025, there had been unauthorized withdrawals of cash, which Abacus never knew. Abacus is a client to Stanbic Bank. So Abacus never knew about some of these, what you would call the porous areas in its online banking of Stanbic Bank. So they lost a lot of money. So by the time they get to realize, because then they are trying to make arrangements to pay their staff. So eventually they realized that there had been unauthorized access and multiple withdrawals which were channeled to various mobile money accounts, hence causing a loss of 2 billion Uganda shillings. So when they go to the court, the judge says, look here, all of you had contractual obligations. You, the plaintiff who is suing Abacus, you had 80% obligation to ensure that you're vigilant. The case of Stanbic Bank, it is saying that, look here, the system of online banking gives you authorization of confirmation, verification, and final approvals. Therefore, hold the other party accountable. But the judge says, no, you are going to take 20% of this responsibility. Eventually, Stanbic Bank is asked to pay over 330 million back to Abacus. The question is not how much was paid, or who was right or who was wrong. It was the case represents a cautionary measure we should take as Ugandans when we are trying to embrace the move to the digitization aspect. So that is one case that I can show you. But again, just last year, you're talking about the breaking into the firewalls and the cyber systems of the likes of Centenary Bank, Equity Bank, and the like. But even at a global level, you've had a very big credit systems breakage
but isn't that the price to pay for societal advancement? Because look, every innovation we've had has had some sort of pitfall. So, and we being I don't know if it's cynical in curtailing this digitization move. So what if there's actually a lot of good in it? What if it's us trying to advance, but there are pitfalls that we need to close? Stanbic Bank has to put in place better systems, etc. Are we not stifling innovation that would actually better us as a global village?
I think our democracy and fundamental human rights should not be sacrificed on the altar of global, what
advancement.
I would call, not only global advancement, that may sound even very positive, but also what I would call global money thirst and the intention to destroy society. Because there is a global play script which is being pushed down our throats for us to follow. And I just want to show you some of those specific aspects. So I don't want to make flat statements. Now,
prove it.
Number two, let me just prove it to you just in a while. So, what is happening right now is that, as I told you, there's been active resistance amongst the nationals. But you see, there has been different international platforms which are extensively pushing for the control of the financial systems of the world. And I'll just show you shortly what these are. When you are assessing international or global trends, you have to look at what are called global intergovernmental and standard bodies. Because you see, they're not simply going to use nations to shove down our throats these global agendas. And I want to show you what these global intergovernmental bodies do. Mainly three things. Number one, they design frameworks. So when you hear that, as Ugandans, we are following a certain global framework towards financial growth of digital currencies, you appreciate that there is a framework which is designed. Number two,
at a global level.
Number two, these global intergovernmental standard bodies also invest in research. So you'll hear them financing research so that nations can get into the digitization, agenda. Then finally, they will also they will create technical rules. They create a play script that you have to follow. And this is mainly to accelerate global shift away from cash. So they research, create frameworks and technical rules. So you'll find lawyers, economists playing along this play script. What are some of these global intergovernmental bodies that we should be aware of? Number one, you've heard of, or you have not heard of what is called the Bank for International Settlements, BIS. In the economic world, it's also known as the Central Bank of Central Banks. What it's doing mainly, it is to control research through what is called their BIS Innovation Hub. And this research is facilitating the move towards digital currencies. Then you have the International Monetary Fund. This one basically provides technical assistance
Yeah.
to developing nations to build CBDC infrastructure.
Yeah.
Now, I also want to caution you that you're going to hear many of the Bank of Uganda officials saying, no, we haven't yet talked about anything to do with CBDC. We're only talking about over-the-counter, whatever. But you see, over-the-counter is ushering in something called the CBDC. Eventually, they will discourage you from the use of cash and encourage you to use digital currencies. And eventually, it ushers in the CBDC.
Yeah.
Then you have another intergovernmental body called the World Economic Forum. This one mainly, it operates a digital currency governance consortium,
Okay. linking
policymakers and to private tech giants. So you know that some of the biggest beneficiaries are going to be private tech giants. So what the World Economic Forum is doing, it is creating a link between our politicians, public policymakers to tech giants to make sure that they're getting some knowledge to come and control us. Then there is what is called the Better Than Cash Alliance. This is hosted by the UN in partnership with the US, India, and alongside other corporations.
Yeah.
This one specifically is dedicated to transitioning governments and corporate. So it is aiding governments.
So what is the motivation, Simon?
The whole
What's the underlying motivation behind all this?
I want to come to that. Just give me only 1 minute to conclude for you, so people can get a full buffet of who is behind this.
Okay, give it to us.
They say about the World Bank. What the World Bank is doing is that it's pushing developing nations to a digital infrastructure. And it has mainly about 4 programs it's implementing. One of them is called the Bali FinTech Agenda. The other one is called the G2PX initiative. Then the CBDC advisory sources, basically for legal enforcement. And then the ID4D funds, biometric national IDs. So those are the parties which are the main players. When you see some of our African nations responding this way, it's because they're reading from a global play script. Now, what is the agenda behind it? The agenda behind it is number one, what you've had the World Economic Forum parroting, what they call a Great Reset. The idea of the Great Reset is to force or to get the nations under one system that is controlled by a few individuals. In the run-up to the COVID-19, you heard of what was called big government, big media, big pharma, all this big kind of thing. These entities which, so for example, with the whole digital currency move, you're putting all the sovereignty of the nationals under the government. So in essence, you're destroying what would have been the private sector players. In essence, you're even destroying your own banking systems. You see, the bankers, some of the bankers think by having the digital currency, their systems will be strong. What they don't realize with the case I've just quoted for you of Abacus versus Stanbic Bank, it increases the liability on the banks. And yet you find that most of the banks are not yet even ready.
They're not ready.
I've just showed you even the Bank of Uganda itself has suffered in 2024, 2022. They suffered major breaches of their firewalls. Now you imagine where you're getting the nationals and you're getting our entire economic system under one central element. Under one central party. If its systems are compromised, eventually the entire nation is compromised. Think about Mr. Museveni's agenda. Because you see, I like Mr. Museveni, I like the NRM. And part of the agenda that they propagate is the sovereignty. That's why that was the spirit behind
the law.
The Sovereignty Act.
The act,
The idea was that we shouldn't surrender our sovereignty to other nationals. When you push the digital currency, you're even going to surrender our national defense system to foreign nationals. Because then they will have the control. So eventually, where does it leave the NRM, which has kept on saying that, our army has to be sovereign. We have to be detached from foreign control. When I've just showed you the parties which are influencing, where does it leave us as nationals, where almost half of our budget is still funded by nationals? Couldn't we be exposing ourselves to foreign control? Actually, extensive foreign control. Because we have a history, as I've said on other platforms elsewhere. If you are to assess, if your concern is corruption, let's talk about corruption for just 1 minute. In 2021, the national budget was themed capitalization of the Ugandan economy. I want you to go and look for a report that was issued by the Initiative for Social and Economic Rights, ISA, which is a civil society organization. It states the following facts. That Uganda got what was called a capitalization grant from the World Bank, IMF, and African Development Bank.
Yeah.
The idea of that grant was to recapitalize the Uganda Development Bank. The Uganda Development Bank had a duty of empowering women groups, youth groups, which were vulnerable and had been hit by the COVID-19. What happens is that some of those resources were mismanaged and they were used by individuals who are not even vulnerable. As a matter of fact, the Finance Committee of Parliament had to issue a report concerning the uses of those resources. It never issued the report. Now, you talk about corruption, that's corruption at a grand scheme, where monies that are borrowed.
Yeah.
I don't want to talk about the oxygen tank crisis in COVID-19, how oxygen tanks were stolen and they were mismanaged. I don't want to talk about how many blocks and apartments went up into the high rising of the skylines of Kampala, being out of resources which were mismanaged.
Yeah.
Now, you talk about the porous areas of our corruption. It is not simply it's not something organic, but some of these systems which impose people to look for alternatives. You were not around during the Amin days. But if you read history, you heard about the use of the magendo. Okay, the use of the black market. It was called the black market.
Yeah.
When you push people, if you coerce people into a digital currency, most likely they're going to look for an option of black market.
Yeah.
Because they want to defy the extensive monitoring system that you're creating. Now, where does that leave our security aspect? Where does that leave our sovereignty? So the agenda at the back of it all, as you asked, it is to prepare for a great reset. And people don't want to hear these conversations, unfortunately. They are so paranoid because the perpetrators of some of these agendas create a paranoia around the people who want to respond to these issues.
Yeah.
So they will either use condescending language, or they will use coercive language, or they will instill fear in the people, or they will cause a blackout. Because some of these conversations are not coming from mainstream media platforms. They will want you to come and do a surface kind of cleanup. But for you to interrogate some of these agendas, it will be something which is far